There we go. All right, so for our one viewer, I'm going to start. The first thing I want to show you is and we're broadcasting on Meerkat as well, so I'm going to try to manage both. It's just a quick makeshift tourniquet. Really quick, if you're going to use something makeshift. Most people that make a hasty tourniquet or a makeshift tourniquet are going to use a belt. I don't even have a belt on today to show you one. Problem with that is it's not going to work very well. You're not going to be able to fashion a windlass strong enough to twist it. So if you have a cravat, or if you can cut something off a t-shirt or something that's a little wider, 3-4 fingers wide, that's going to be ideal. And one of the quick, hasty ways that you can use this, I'll kind of use my leg here as an example, but just throw it over the leg, right? And then take something simple like a keychain, right? A little key ring, slide that over one of these ends, right? You can kind of see what I did there. And then just tie this, simple tie. Nothing fancy. The keychain's free sliding on there. See that? Then what you want to do is get yourself a carabiner. Trying like hell to let you see. You want to take a carabiner, right? Put it inside one of these ends, and then same thing. Just throw a quick slip knot over the top of it, and then just start twisting. Twist, twist, twist. Twist, twist, twist. This is going to become extremely tight. Right, you're gonna elicit pain, and no matter what, no matter which tourniquet you choose, you're gonna elicit pain. That's just part of the deal. To compress an artery down, you're gonna have to compress down, put pressure on nerves, and that's, it doesn't matter. There's no tourniquet that's not gonna do that. And the advantage of doing it this way is you can then take this carabiner and clip it through the key ring, and then that'll keep it from unspindling. And you got a nice, quick, hasty makeshift tourniquet. So normally what I'll do is I'll have a carabiner on my keychain. These are my keys. I'll keep the carabiner on there, and then as long as this is in my bag or I have access to this, or if I cut somebody's t-shirt, just with that little thing alone, I have enough that I could potentially slow down some bleeding. It might not be a perfect tourniquet, but it'll definitely stem the bleeding some. So that's pretty simple. The next one to show you is a SWAT-T tourniquet. And SWAT stands for stretch, wrap, and tuck. This is really common with law enforcement. All it is just stretchable rubber. The problem with this is it's much tougher to put on with one hand. And if you add blood to this, it's going to become a little slippery. So not the best. But the reason law enforcement guys choose this often is because of the cost point. It roughly costs, I don't know, $10 or so. And the concept with this is pretty simple. And I probably would start under my arm. This way you can kind of get a turn on it. But you can see this is requiring a lot of movement and manipulation of my arm. And when somebody gets shot in the arm, their ability to do all this kind of goes away. So if your arm's just hanging dead, it's going to be much tougher to do this. So, and the reason that the Committee on Tactical Combat Casualty Care doesn't approve tourniquets like this is because it's too difficult to put on with one hand. So you got to kind of tuck it on itself, right? Maybe use chin, and then just start wrapping. And if I get a chance, I'll go grab a pulse oximeter and put that on my finger, and you'll be able to see at least when this becomes a tourniquet. And it's starting to pull hair out of my arm. It's not a pleasant sensation, but and same thing, when you get to the end, there's no way to affix this. You're just going to have this piece, this raw piece. There's no Velcro, there's no attachment. So you got to find a way to tuck it in. You got to kind of wrap it on itself and tuck it in. But it's doing a pretty effective job. I'm not sure if I tuck it, if I'll be able to check an arterial pulse and see where I'm at. And I don't have a good palpable pulse, so it's actually done a relatively fair job. And again, it may not be completely stemming the arterial blood flow, and that's not ideal. We want to stop arterial blood flow. But it might buy time for a second person to get there with two hands and apply another one. So that's a SWAT-T tourniquet. You might see those. The other one that we do sell on the Trauma Monkeys website, tourniquet that I absolutely love, is a RATS tourniquet. And it stands for Rapid Application Tourniquet System. I'll kind of show you that. It's just flat bungee cord and a cleat. But the advantage of this, and this is by no means the greatest tourniquet out there, but what I love about it is this will work on a kid or a baby or a dog, whereas most of these other commercial tourniquets will not do that. And so to use this one, all you got to do is just pull some of it through this 3-finger loop. So see how I just sort of pulled that through there? I'll demo that for you. Pull it through. And then that creates the portion that your arm is going to go through or your leg is going to go through. And then all you do is just same thing, just circumferentially start wrapping that around and around and around, and it's going to get really, really tight. these get really, really tight. And the science behind these bungee cord or multiple wrap style, every turn that you make on this tourniquet, each successional turn doubles how much pressure you're exerting. So each wrap is going to make this tighter and tighter and tighter. And then all it has is this little simple cleat mechanism that you just kind of jam it into. You kind of see that where I jam it in the cleat, and then that cleat locks it in, and you can use both ends of the cleat as a safety. So these work really well for a hasty, fast tourniquet. The disadvantage over something like this and the SWAT T, some of the other disadvantages, if your patient's sitting down, you got to wrap this around their leg. You're going to have to keep lifting their leg and moving and manipulating their leg. Whereas you might only have to do that once with a traditional soft T wide or CAT or something like that. So those are important. Another one that's similar style to that, one that we don't really recommend, you won't see very many of these, but this is called a TK4. This is one of the first tourniquets that was actually added to an IFAK, to a military ICAT. And I don't mean first as in recent times or in old style tourniquets, been around a long time, but for OIF, OEF, for changes when TCCC first came online, this was one of the first things that was added to an IFAK. And the concept with this, kind of the same thing. You gotta kind of hold it here and hook it on itself, and then you gotta just throw all these multiple wraps on top of each other. And same idea. It's really, really hard to do by yourself. It'd be almost impossible to do if you were weak and bleeding, and it would be really difficult to do in the dark with gloves on, while you're bleeding out. So I figured I'd just demo that and show you that. So probably the most famous tourniquet, or the most popular commercial tourniquet, bar none, is going to be the CAT tourniquet. You can see the CAT on it. There are some Chinese knockoffs on these. You got to be careful. If you're using a CAT tourniquet, make sure it has a red tip. The red tip tourniquets are the last generation, and they're much improved. The original ones had a lot of different issues with them. Fabric breaking, the windlass breaking. And the issue with this, kind of go through pros and cons. I'd say the pro, and this one is broken. I didn't even realize that. So this one's going to be a little tough to fool around with. We should be able to demo it anyway, though. I'm not sure how it ripped. You can see kind of on the end there, this tore off. This should be sewn through here, through that loop. But the main advantage of this tourniquet is that it's the most popular tourniquet out there. So if you're carrying this and somebody rolls up on you, there's a good likelihood they're going to know what it is and how it works and be familiar with it. So that's kind of a pro. And it's probably the easiest tourniquet to apply one-handed. So if you have it staged through just one of these, you can pretty easily, even if your hand is not working well, just twist on this Velcro, pull a little bit, and be able to apply it with one arm. And I know it's dark, it's probably tough for you to see, but you're going to seat that cleat in there, and then you're going to use this over the top, and hopefully you record the time. And you'll want to check and make sure you don't have a pulse. So, the disadvantages of this tourniquet, some of the cons are going to be, number one is plastic and Velcro. If you add blood and mud and dust and dirt, it's going to make this much more difficult. The other issue that's built into this tourniquet is that when you apply it, if you don't make this really, really tight before you start twisting, it only has a limited amount of throw. It's only going to get a little bit smaller. So if you don't put it on tight before you start twisting, it's a waste of time. It's not going to be an effective tourniquet. And then the last thing is this part down here, part that you got to feed this through. That's going to require a little bit of manual dexterity. And you have to remember when you put it on somebody's leg to put it through both pieces. They call this the friction adapter. I'll kind of demo it there, but you have to remember to put it through both. And so that's another downside. In the dark at night, in a stressful situation after a shooting, is whoever's applying this going to remember an extra step? Again, that's probably. So we often see with this tourniquet, we'll see it on the leg, and more often than not, they don't route it through both parts of the friction adapter because it makes it harder to apply. And then, treatment fix for that for us as medics would be to put another tourniquet on. Don't even mess with it, just go to a second. So the next one I think to show you is probably the second most popular one that's out there now. And it's a soft T wide. It's a new generation. I should have grabbed an old soft T, I didn't. And here's kind of what it looks like in the packaging. And here's kind of what it looks like. Metal windlass, much sturdier, much beefier. It has this clip on it, you can kind of see. And the concept here is you're out. Clip that on there, put it on, one-hand application, and you're going to have to work it a little bit. Work it, work it, work it. work it, get that thing. I shouldn't have worn a black shirt. I apologize. I'll try to go low. But remember, we're putting these on nice and high, nice and tight. So you can already see that although this tourniquet is a good tourniquet and it's popular, it's harder to put on with one hand than the cat is. And then once we get to this point, we're just going to twist, 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 get it as tight as we can, as many twists as possible. And then you use this triangle. I don't know if you guys can see that. Use that triangle to lock it in place. And then that just sort of secures it. You can kind of see if I put it up in the light a little better for you. Nice and high, nice and tight. So the only disadvantage to this tourniquet is this little release mechanism that tends to be in the back. I'll see if I can manipulate it. I've got it on the inside. It's going to be tough for you to see that buckle there. I'll move it. But if you hit that buckle, like I just did there, accidentally or inadvertently, it's going to loosen the tourniquet up. So if you push up on that, I know Baltimore PD rescued a police officer, and in dragging him into the cruiser, they clipped that on the door frame. By the time they got in the car, it was already off. He started bleeding some more. Fortunately, he survived. So that's just something to be aware of when you're training with these. Got that. What else we got? We got a Ranger ratchet. I don't see a lot of these anymore out there. It's just, I guess, some entrepreneurial thinking Rangers just copied what a cargo strap was. And you can loosen it and tighten it just like a traditional cargo strap. And all you do is just put this over the limb. It's got this little like foot metal dealio. So you got to get it on there nice and tight. I'll go this way. It's probably going to be a little easier. Try to secure it. And again, putting this on one-handed is almost impossible. And then all you do is just like a standard cargo strap is just start ratcheting it down. I've had guys say that the problem with this one is you can make it a good tight arterial tourniquet with a few clicks. And then you can start thinking about maybe even breaking bones because you're going to get a lot of torque out of this. The other disadvantage of something like this is going to be it's big and it's bulky. This is not something that I would carry on my kit. It's not something I'd have on the outside of my vest. It's going to foul up. It's probably going to get sand and dirt and stuff in it. So in a big vehicle bag or a boat box or something like that, this might be a sensible choice. I have one, but again, I very rarely, I don't recommend it be the tourniquet that, you know, as a medic and a responder, I would use it. I wouldn't make it a tourniquet that I have to self-apply or a tourniquet that you wear for somebody else to put on you. So it's out there, it's available. And again, they've sort of fallen out of fashion. And then the last one I wanted to show you is a MET, a medical emergency tourniquet. It's made by TQS, Tier 1 Quality Solutions. I'm a big fan of this tourniquet. And this is an older generation one. You can tell because it's a little thinner. The newer one is a little thicker. And you know that this tourniquet has got to be better than all the other ones I showed you because it's in multicam. So clearly anything that's in multicam is much more fabulous and much better. I'm joking, obviously. I like the older, thin ones. I'm not worried about it cutting in. It's going to be painful no matter what. But with this style tourniquet, pretty easy to put on one-handed, pretty simple. Anybody can figure it out. You just pull the tab and you get it tight. And the other advantage of this one of the pros is if it's not on tight and you start twisting the windlass, it doesn't matter. It's still going to tighten up. It's still going to pull all the slack out. And then the way that you lock this tourniquet down is by just using this little Velcro sleeve here. It'll just slide in there and it'll catch. It's my dog scratching himself in the background. So, and then there's a second mechanism to lock it in, you know, and that might be for the second rescue when he comes up. And then, like I said, there's a newer, better version of this. The original one had this just big metal rod, and it was in Shoot Me Red. And the newer ones now come in all these Blactical and all these other sexy colors. And then the wider version is kind of the same thing. Same tourniquet, same concept, it's just a little wider. So when it's wider, you're getting a little more friction created here by this ripstop stuff. So putting it on yourself sometimes takes a little effort. And depending on which direction you go, kind of like I put it on almost backwards here. So I'm gonna have to flip it or it's gonna be really hard for me to work away from myself. So, I mean, the big thing is just train on your kit, train on your gear. You wanna get it tight. And here, see how I gotta keep pushing it away from me to get it tight. I do like this tourniquet. You know, when people ask which one I prefer, what I like, what I carry, I like this one only because I've used it on real world casualties. I've saved lives. I've stopped bleeding by using a MET tourniquet. The Soft T is a great tourniquet, but I've only used it on training. I've used it on mannequins. I've used it, you know, on cooperative people who weren't hemorrhaging. So, you know, it's tough you know, for me, it's not that I don't believe in the product. It's just that if I'm a fan of anything, it's stuff that I know is proven, that I've personally used, and that I know works. Well, the other one I threw out here was a NATO. Again, these are harder to find now. This is a NATO tourniquet. I always joke that this thing looks like something from Cracker Barrel. Kind of looks like a puzzle, and you got to kind of figure out what to do. So kind of along the lines of that makeshift tourniquet that we did before, it has this ring. I'll show you how it works. Let me pull it up and out because it's not set up right. So it's got 2 rings on it, one ring that slides, right? So in theory, what you're supposed to do with this is take it and wrap it around their arm. And again, you can see trying to do this by yourself would be pretty damn hard. So you're supposed to just put multiple wraps on this, you know, multiple, and then at some point clip it to itself. You can see, obviously, it's kicking my ass trying to do it by myself. You put it on the middle, and now you just twist. So kind of just like we were doing before with this is taking the place of the carabiner, right? This is twisting, this is becoming your windlass. And then the other ring, the floating ring, locks this tourniquet in place if you're able to manipulate it. And again, you can see how hard it is to do by myself. But that clips in, and that's taking the place of the keychain. So all it's doing is taking, you know, a simplified way to do the carabiner and keychain tourniquet, but you're using this, and that's a NATO. I know some of our other allied forces have used them. It works well. A lot of medics like them. I've trained units where they love it, and they're like, hey, we want to have a NATO. And you know, my response to that is, you want to carry it, carry it. But again, I wouldn't make this the tourniquet that I put on my outer kit. And the reason is, this is difficult to understand. I teach this for a living, and I still have to Google how to use this. So if this is what's hanging off your vest or your kit or whatever, and you get shot, you know, what I tell people is, think about the stupidest guy you've ever worked with, because that's who's going to come over the hill and come get you. Is he going to figure out in the dark with gloves on at night while we're taking fire how to use this and be able to put it on effectively and stop the bleeding? I don't know. I'd rather him have something like this that I know he's trained on, that I know, you know, my 6-year-old can figure out, look, it's red, I should pull on that. And it's a little easier, a little more user-friendly. So, you know, you want something that you're able to put on yourself easy, and you want something that others can put on you easy too. So the last couple of things I brought out to show are some junctional tourniquets. I just got these a couple weeks ago. So just to kind of demo them, or just to kind of show you. So this is the CROC, right, or Combat Ready Operational Clamp. I think that's what it is. And you can see it's relatively small. I don't know what it weighs, a few pounds, maybe 5 pounds. But and it mollies. I would never molly this on my kit. The only purpose of using these is to put a significant amount of pressure on a junctional hemorrhage. And this is only to be used for the inguinal bleed. So if they got a femoral, you're going to have to do wound packing with hemostatics. And then this, in theory, this sort of puts pressure on the wound. And you can see the problem with this is, look at all the different puzzle pieces I've got to deal with here. So I'll try to quickly get this together. And again, I've only fiddled with it a little bit. So I much rather would string, and I'm going to do a video for you where we take 2 different soft T wides and clip them together, and then we use a Nalgene bottle or a Samsplint or something, and we make, you know, these things cost $400 or $500, and you can do this with stuff you already have. So you can kind of see as I'm kind of stringing this thing together, it's got all these holes in the top so you can adjust it. You're gonna pull this pin, and then so this is gonna go under your patient, and then this is gonna go kind of above them, and then once you figure out how to rig all these straps together, kind of like that, I want to say, right? That looks right. I apologize, probably tough for you guys to see. So you can change the angle and the dangle on this thing, but this is something that they typically will use in an OR. I know they'll use something like this after they do an angiocath or something like that, just to maintain pressure so they don't have to stand there holding it manually. So they just kind of capitalized on that idea. And then this is going to screw onto the end of, God only knows, I think here, maybe. And then this ball goes on that. And then there's your kind of croc. There's your croc clamp. And then you just twist this down until it puts pressure on the femoral. Again, it's $400, I think, if not more. It's a lot of weight, and it's only does one thing. So, you know, most of us are looking to be light, and we're looking to carry things that have multiple uses. So the other one that I brought to show you is SAM, from a company that makes SAM splints. They also make a junctional tourniquet. I have a SAM junctional. You can kind of see here, SAM. And the concept with this, kind of the same idea. The advantage of this one over the other is that it's the only one that's approved for axillary hemorrhage. So if they're bleeding up in the armpit, potentially you could use this, and if they're bleeding from the groin. And so what it has is, you can see this cuff that's on here, you can inflate that with this bulb. Got a little blood pressure cuff style bulb. And when you inflate that, that's what's going to apply the manual pressure if you get it over the right area on top of your wound packing. So let me deflate that, tuck it back in. Let's see if I can apply it. You know, it basically, all SAM did was incorporate that this manual inflation pressure. You can see that pressure cuff comes off, but they incorporated that into their pelvic sling. So if they've got your patient has a pelvic fracture, this is another option. You just don't need the direct pressure portion. So all you're doing with this, and you can adjust the size of it, but you're clipping this, making it nice and tight, closing the book. And now this is right over my femoral artery, and then we just do that inflation. And as I inflate, it creates direct pressure over the wound. And then there's an additional one if you had bilateral femorals. You could put one on each side. And there's a shoulder strap. That's what this is. So that if you rig this across their chest and up here and over the shoulder, it'll put some pressure up under the armpit. So yeah, these are pretty pricey. So I don't know. I've seen them. I've seen combat medics that have them. The one I don't have that I need to get is the jet belt. And the jet belt's kind of along the lines of the SAM, wraps around and it puts T-clamps down on the groin. So, you know, those things are there and they're available. But there's a lot of other ways that you can do that without having to have the $500 piece of kit. You know, maybe it makes sense to have that in a clinic. Me personally, I wouldn't carry that in my bag. I have a right knee, and I've got usually more than enough strap hangers or operators that come and needle or press on something and hold if I need to. I could always jam combat gauze in somebody's thigh, drop my knee on it, and do medicine or shoot back or do whatever I have to do. And again, the other way, I don't have two of these here, but you can take this clip portion on the soft T wide, and then this portion, and use two of them and hook them together, and that'll create a nice wide belt. And all you'll do is just place this over the top of their junctional and then stick something in there that's firm and rigid, twist down, and you'll get that same thing for the price of two tourniquets, which you're probably already carrying anyway. So that's another option that's out there. And like I said, I'll try to do a video for that because I think that'd be a good demo. Using their helmet upside down maybe, or using a Nalgene bottle or rolled up SAM splint, something firm and rigid, and then just twisting and getting some direct pressure. That's all I got. I wanted to just do a quick show and tell on tourniquets and just talk about a couple of different styles. So more than anything, this was for me to figure out the Meerkat app and try to learn how to use this Google Plus. You know, we really are monkeys when it comes to the electronic portion of this. So if you've been following us on the website or reading the blog, thank you for your support. Thanks for sharing it. We've had a pretty tremendous response, but it's been tough for us because, you know, we all work full-time jobs, and you know, we've got dogs that need to be walked and kids that need to be beat. So we stay busy, but I've been trying like heck to learn more about how this technology works so that we can do this better. And this seems okay. I know obviously black shirt, next time I'll go with something lighter and I'll do some lighting. But really we want feedback. We need to know what questions are out there. We need to know what problems you're having so that we can kind of offer suggestions and different ways to solve them. So I'm Bill from Trauma Monkeys. Check us out at traumamonkeys.com. On Meerkat, thanks Merle Patterson for following us. And I'm not sure who the viewer is that's on Google+. I'm guessing that it's Mike, just because Mike was in here before. Mike, thanks for following, brother. Hope all is safe, and I hope that you guys at least have access to some tourniquets. We should be on the camera here. That's all I got. Have a great day. Love, peace, and chicken grease.